Good morning. Welcome to the Point. This week in Lansing, the legislature was taking a look at the budget. There are big holes in the budget for this year and next. And Speaker of the House Lee Chatfield is hopeful that he can work with Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who he is still pursuing litigation against, to come up with solutions for that budget. He also says he would like to see an end of the partisanship in Lansing. Mr. Speaker, this is a first of sorts. This is the first in-person interview that I've done since I last talked to you back in April. And we're social distancing and doing the things that we've been told and asked to do. I want to ask you about what's going on from a legislative perspective as we move forward in this pandemic response. I know that there is litigation that is still out there. I assume that that lawsuit is going to move to the Supreme Court.
So first, Rick, it's good to be back in person and to be talking with you. And the decision came out in the Court of Claims, and what we requested was an emergency bypass for it to go directly to the Supreme Court. So we're still waiting to hear from them on whether or not that will be granted or not.
What I guess I'm trying to get a handle on is what's going on in the legislature. Obviously, there's day-to-day business, although you're not meeting as often, but there's still lots to be done, and a lot to be done in terms of budgeting. So what's going on with that?
Well, the focus on the budget is our main priority right now. You know, because of the government's reaction to COVID-19, there will be a very large budget shortfall, and we're going to have some tough decisions that we have to make in the coming months with this governor. And that's our focus right now, to ensure that we have a budget that works for the people of our state. But as I said, there's going to be some tough decisions that need to be made, and part of it will depend on how much relief we get from the federal government and what strings are attached to that relief that we receive. So we're working hard through the budget process right now. Our committees are meeting right now. We're continuing to move forward policy that we believe is important for the people of our state. And we're also, Rick, taking a proactive look on what policies need to be enacted should this ever happen again, or what policies need to be enacted to prevent something like this from happening again. So I think we need to, yes, look at the budget now and what decisions need to be made today, but also take a proactive approach in ensuring that our people are served should something like this ever occur in Michigan again.
And what does that look like from your standpoint? Are you talking about trying to do away with the 1945 Emergency Powers Act, or are you trying to change that significantly? What do those changes look like?
Well, I think a lot of that, Rick, will depend on, what the decision is in the Supreme Court, right? I believe the governor's interpretation of the 1945 law is unconstitutional. And it's important to know the question before the court right now, Rick, is not on the policies of the governor's executive orders, right? The question before the Supreme Court is not on the governor's intentions or has she taken this seriously enough. The question before the court is, can this governor or any future governor not just declare a state of emergency, but carry it on indefinitely, and therefore render the legislature absolutely and completely meaningless. And I have to ask people, what would you think if President Trump came out tomorrow and said that he no longer needed Congress? That he was not only going to enforce the law, but he was going to make the law, and he was going to let Congress know when he needed them again. There would be an uprising, and rightfully so, because we believe, Rick, that even during a pandemic, the rule of law needs to be upheld. Even during a crisis, the Constitution still needs to be followed. But we believe that we're stronger when we work together, right? We offered that partnership to the governor, and she decided to go it alone. But the legislature is the people's voice, and I personally believe that the people of our state deserve a seat at the table when these decisions are being made. So a lot of it will depend on what the decision the courts make and what our next step is.
I've asked you about this before, and I know your basic answer, but as an outsider looking in, I find it difficult to see how you, the Senate Majority Leader, and the governor can move forward with what are going to be really difficult budget decisions, and not just for this year's budget, but for next year's budget, which presumably would be presented to the governor by July 1st, if that's possible. How do you negotiate that? How do you make those really tough decisions at a time where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of communication between the two branches?
So I've personally never let disagreement on one issue stop me from working with the governor on another issue. I think there's enough partisanship in our communities today. 2020 is a very important year. People are already going to be politically charged. We have to rise above that. I don't think coronavirus is playing politics, and I don't think we should be either. So have I had plenty of disagreements with the governor throughout COVID-19? Sure. Do I think some of the governor's actions have led to unnecessary harm across our state, and we're going to see a larger economic disaster because of it? Sure. But I'm still going to have to talk with the governor, and I enjoy doing that and working with the governor and trying to find a consensus. That's what we were sent here to do. People did not send us here to Lansing to look like Washington. Do we have disagreements? Yes. But that should not negate our real, sincere effort to reach a consensus on the areas that we can have an agreement on. And that's my commitment. I'm going to continue to work with the governor. I'm going to continue to work with both sides of the aisle to make sure we move our state forward. And some of that will be a very complicated budget cycle. Just when you thought last year's budget process couldn't have gotten much more bumpy, COVID-19 comes along. So our work's cut out for us here, Rick, but I have every bit of confidence we're going to get it done.
I appreciate your willingness, and you say that you're willing to work with the governor, but does it make it harder to get 56 votes if you do come up with a deal after this kind of protracted discussion between the legislative and executive?
Any deal that we've cut with the administration so far this term, we've been able to procure the votes needed to cut that deal. And I have every bit of confidence in my colleagues in the legislature that they're ready to roll up their sleeves and get a couple things done. The colleagues I know, Rick, have been working longer hours than they ever have before during this COVID-19 process. The calls coming into our offices, the people that are reaching out because they're hurting, they're in a tough spot, they're not getting their unemployment check, they have a family member in a nursing home, they're afraid for them because of some of the policies we've enacted in our state by sending people who've contracted COVID-19 to nursing homes. The answers that people are demanding from us are higher than they've ever been before. And they've been working incredibly hard. So their sleeves are rolled up, they're ready to get to work, and I think any deal that we strike with the governor, we'll be able to follow through on that.
Well, the budget becomes problematic from a couple of standpoints. We're just a few days, 30 plus, whatever it is, from the schools' budgets going into place, and we know that in this current school year, there are going to be deficits. There has been some suggestion you might try to hold schools harmless, but if you do that, you're going to have to pull it from somewhere else. When you think about those kind of decisions, do you see a roadmap? Do you have an idea of what those cuts start to look like for both this year, if not next year?
I think that'll become more evident in the ongoing conversations we have with the administration. One of our requests to the governor was that she give us another budget proposal, right? We have, constitutionally, we have the requirement that the governor give a proposal to the legislature for that year. And, obviously with COVID-19 coming into our lives unexpectedly, I think we need another proposal. Once the governor can do that, we'll then look at her numbers and we'll begin having internal conversations. I don't believe we should be turning back the clock when it comes to education funding. But I'm going to tell you this, Rick, we're going to have some tough decisions that we have to make because we are finding out that you can't, as government, just unilaterally shut down the entire economy and still expect all the revenues to continue coming in. And the fact is we're facing a big shortfall right now. We're going to be in conversations with the federal administration to find out how much is coming in, what are the strings attached to those dollars, and then from that, make the best decisions we can to make sure our state moves forward. And obviously education is a top priority for us to ensure our kids are receiving the education that they deserve.
If I'm not mistaken, you spoke with the president when he was in Michigan recently. Did you have the opportunity to encourage him to get more federal help, understanding that the House has passed a plan in Washington that the Senate is not likely to pass? So there's still a lot of talking going on there too, but did you have that chance to talk with him?
So I've had ongoing conversations with the White House during this COVID-19 pandemic. I think the federal administration has done an incredible job providing relief to the states. They've acted swiftly with great leadership, and I'm incredibly proud of that partnership. When he was in Michigan that day and I greeted him at the tarmac, we exchanged a few words, but that was about the extent of it. But we have had conversations aside from that, Rick, and part of that conversation has been federal aid. And the president wondering how Michigan is doing. He's paid particularly close attention to Michigan, and we're very thankful for that, and we're thankful for all the help we've received.
I know that you have people who are experts when it comes to the economy. You talk to them during the revenue estimating conferences and have ongoing conversations. Do you have a sense, or has anybody given you a sense, of what Michigan's economy looks like when this finally, and well, I say come to an end, I don't know that it does come to an end, as things start to relax and we more fully open the economy? Do you have any estimates from some of those experts what the economy might look like?
It'll depend on how we continue to react to COVID-19. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, Rick. And that's why we've been calling on the governor for well over a month to be regional in the approach. Rather than 2 months ago, us trying to determine who in our state was essential or non-essential, we should have said what activities can be done safely, what activities are unsafe. Because we didn't make that adjustment, there's a lot of unnecessary hurt right now. There are people who have lost their jobs. There's families who have lost their entire livelihoods because they've been unable to work a job that could be done safely. That has an economic impact on our state. We've been calling on the governor to adopt the federal standards as it relates to what critical infrastructure is. We've refused to do that. We've had a lot of missteps as a state that has led to a lot of hurt. And because of that, we're going to have some tough budget decisions that we have to make. Now, at the end of the day, I admit to you, Rick, the governor's in a tough spot. No manual was given to the president, no manual was given to the governor on how to deal with COVID-19. I just think we work best when we're communicating with one another, upholding the democratic process, ensuring people have a voice and a seat at that table. But when we work together, we are stronger. No manual was given to them, but I want this governor to be successful. I want the president to be successful. If there's anyone out there who hears either one of those statements and that bothers them, that could be part of our problem, because that means we're too divided by partisan lines right now. And this is a time where we should all be drawn together. So do I disagree with many of the things the governor has done? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I still want this state to be successful, and that means partnering with her and working together.